This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in houseplants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. There is so much this morning to cover, so let's start with the question of whether or not there will be renewed discussions between the United States and Iran. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, in his press conference this morning, emphasized the fact that Iran has a choice to make: peace, negotiations, or war. And Pete Hegseth made it very clear that the United States prefers diplomacy, but is ready for any other action. So let's start with the question of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States claims that the strait is in our possession now, but the Iranians maintain no, quite the contrary, they are in control. The simple truth is that the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, and the economic impacts around the world will be felt. 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and if the strait remains closed, we will feel that impact. We will feel it around the world. And so there is a real question: what will happen? In the meantime, we are sending more troops to the Middle East. Is it because we intend to use them, or is it because we want to emphasize to the Iranians that we are prepared to do whatever it takes in order to succeed? And then the question is, what does success mean? Does success mean the opening of the strait and the free flow of oil? Does it mean regime change in Iran? And despite the fact that the president says there has been regime change, we know there has not been regime change. All you have to do is talk to the Iranian people themselves. But there is more, and that is the religious implications of what is going on now. Remember that Iran is a Shia nation. It is devoted to the Shiite vision of Islam. And Pete Hegseth continually touts his Christian experience as if that should make a difference to a Secretary of Defense. Please note, I continue to say Secretary of Defense, not Secretary of War. There is no Department of War in the United States, no matter what the sign changes in the Pentagon may be. There is only a Secretary of Defense. And so now we proceed to the question of what will happen with Iran and whether or not there will be negotiation or whether there will be a military strike. What Donald Trump has decided is to maintain both options, although we are repeatedly told that the preference is for a diplomatic solution. I must say a word about the Catholic bishops. The Catholic bishops here in the United States are more and more lining up in support of Pope Leo. The simple fact is that President Trump is doubling down on his view that the Pope is out of step. Leo spoke to journalists en route to Cameroon as he continued his trip to Africa. He made no mention of President Trump's latest posting. There was a question by Vice President J.D. Vance that the Pope should not be talking theology. Of course, that's all the Pope really does. Trump's attacks on Leo began after the Pope implied criticism of the war that is taking place now. Leo called Trump's threat to annihilate Iranian civilization truly unacceptable. And overnight, Donald Trump responded, "Not good," in response to the post, citing so-called media posts by Leo before he was Pope that were often critical of Trump. Is this a war between two individuals, Trump and the Pope? Is it more than that now, an escalation of the conflict with America's Catholics? This is something everyone needs to understand very clearly, that we cannot allow religion to drive what we are doing. And when Pete Hegseth says that we are fighting a war for Christian civilization, I think that is a serious, serious misstatement. Look, we had another situation which is equally important. Republicans in the United States Senate took a vote, and the vote had to do with whether or not Congress should have war powers involved in all this activity. The vote was 52 to 47, and it was the fourth time this year that the Senate has voted to cede, and I want to underline the word cede, its war powers to the president in the conflict that is currently going on. Let's be clear. There is a 60-day or 90-day deadline. And as Tom Tillis, Republican of North Carolina, said, it's time to fish or cut bait. Lisa Murkowski, Republican of Alaska, has been talking about a resolution that would authorize the war beyond that time period. And Republican Senator John Curtis of Utah and Susan Collins of Maine have also said they would like to see congressional action. Democrats have vowed to vote on the Senate floor as often as it takes. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that with gas prices climbing, and I quote directly, the American people literally cannot afford for Republicans to forego another opportunity to work with Democrats to end Trump's disastrous war. The question of war and peace, and the question of how we proceed, is now essentially the one we must deal with. No matter what happens with Iran, it's not over. And now let me say a quick word about Lebanon. It was announced today that the President of Lebanon and the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States are going to meet jointly. I want to emphasize and underline something I have said in the past, but which needs to be understood clearly. We are not at war, the United States or Israel, with Lebanon. What the war entails is Hezbollah, the army of God, which is fighting from Lebanese territory. And so it is clear to me, anyway, that in order for there to be a peaceful resolution, Lebanon has to be stabilized. And the odds of Lebanon being stabilized at this point seem to me not to be good. Hezbollah has said that any agreement between Israel and Lebanon they will reject. And they've rejected even the idea of talks. I like to remind people that once upon a time there was an agreement between Israel and Lebanon. Go back to May 17th, 1983, and you will see that there was an agreement. It was not a peace agreement, it was a ceasefire agreement. And that agreement fell because the Lebanese government is weak. It doesn't have real authority. Hezbollah and the Druze and the Maronite Christians and, well, the battle between Shia and Sunni Muslim all prevail in Lebanon, which has never been a real country. This is something that needs to be reckoned with. I don't know the solution. I know that what the Israelis want is a quiet border. They don't want to see the north of Israel needing to vacate because of weapons fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. And there is more when it comes to foreign policy. Donald Trump continues to disparage NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which has been the bedrock of America's alliances since the end of World War II. We now face a problem in terms of the determination by the President of the United States. And let me point out again the importance of a president. When Donald Trump goes to China to meet with the Chinese leadership, what will the real reaction in China be? And what can the president really accomplish? Make no mistake, the debate in the United States Senate over war powers has very much to do with the power of a president of the United States in terms of foreign policy. And let me make clear what I have said in the past. When it comes to foreign policy, a president essentially is king. A president determines that policy. And let me remind you that in the war in Vietnam, when in May and April of 1973, the question came up about what our future would be in terms of a war. In the end, and you will recall this happened in the Ford administration, you will recall that the decision was made not to appropriate funds to, and I put it in quotes, save South Vietnam. From 1973, 74, into 1975, this battle was waged. And finally, in 1975, Gerald Ford understood he would not have the money in order to continue the battle. The question now becomes, what will the United States Senate do? And given the present constitution of the United States Senate, that is, who are the sitting senators, it is now clear that the Senate will continue to cede powers of war to the president. But the next major issue this morning is Trump again threatening to fire the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. You know that they are clashing. And federal prosecutors made an unannounced visit this week to the construction site of the new Federal Reserve headquarters. They were denied admission because this is really a battle that cannot be won by anyone. The question becomes, what will Donald Trump do when Jerome Powell's term expires? Senator Tom Tillis, a North Carolina Republican, and a key member of the Senate Banking Committee, has vowed to vote against Kevin Warsh, Trump's nominee to replace Powell as Fed chair, until the investigation is dropped. And so the committee, closely divided, everything seems to be held in suspension. So this is a real question. Powell's term as Fed governor expires May the 15th, but his term as Fed board member lasts until January of 2028. President Trump's threat to fire Powell comes as the Supreme Court is weighing the president's effort to remove another central bank governor, Lisa Cook. Remember that lower courts have so far allowed Cook to remain on her job while her legal challenge to the firing continues. The Supreme Court also seems likely, we are told, to keep her on the Fed when the court heard arguments in January. A decision could come at any time. And again, it is a test of the power of the president and the power of the Fed. These standoffs are an indication of what I would call the chaos within the Trump administration. Whether it is foreign policy or domestic policy, Trump seems to have a problem. And I want to come back to this question of a religious war. I come back to it because there is no question that the Catholic bishops' stand in favor of Pope Leo against the position of Donald Trump is very significant. How will it affect the elections? And let's point out that in the United States, every individual has the right to vote as they see fit. And there is no sense, at least that I can see, that religion should play a role. These issues need to be resolved, and they need to be resolved carefully. I am a firm advocate of the separation of church and state. The minute I hear a federal official invoke religion, well, I've got a problem. And the idea of comparing Donald Trump to Jesus, frankly, as a Jew who has no skin in the game, so to speak, I find it deeply offensive. So these are the questions that we will be dealing with. And let me explain very simply and very directly that the president seems to, frankly, have a problem when it comes to Jesus and religion. Interestingly enough, Franklin Graham, the son of evangelist Billy Graham, the late evangelist, weighed in to sort of exonerate Trump from any issues. And yet, we all know that the question of religion in American life is going to be central in the days ahead. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. Remember, tomorrow is Friday. I will take questions, so you need to send your questions to GoGoZoger. Some people, by the way, prefer to send them directly to me. I try to integrate those questions, and we will have question and answers tomorrow. Please remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. This show's been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on our advertising support. This will help us create more opportunities for this podcast. My deep appreciation to GoGoZoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast, and I will be back tomorrow with more of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I look forward to seeing you then.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.